All right, so let's talk about the 1911 and why you should even consider buying one uh, right now, and when you have all these other types of firearms that you can choose from. So the 1911 is kind of a weird animal. It's been around forever. Very good design. There's still a good aftermarket for it. It's highly customized. There's a lot of different models, and there's the high capacity double stack 9 millimeters, the race guns, all that good stuff. I'm just focusing more on just the standard single stack 45 ACP 1911. That's kind of what I'm focusing on. Why would you even want to get one when you have a lot of striker fired guns out there that'll provide a lot more capability for a lot less? The 1911 is expensive. A good 1911 is it's going to cost you a little bit of cash. There are some budget ones out there, and I realize that, and there are some good ones in the budget category. But the problem is with the budget category is the quality control. That always hurts in that category. In my experience, kind of reviewing firearms and looking at guns and such, you may have a good one that just runs great, and then you pick up another one that was made on a different day, and it's just not running well. It just has issues. It's a lemon. Less so with the more expensive guns. I mean, you're probably looking at about an average of $800 to $1,000 or even more. The one you see in the video, you've seen many times before. It's my only 1911 that I have at the moment. I used to have many others, but I just kind of got rid of them. And I may get another one, but I think if I get another one, I don't know if I'll get 45. I'd probably rather get like 9 millimeter, something like that. But anyway, so this one it's been customized. It's a lot of internal work, so it's just an expensive beast. And with everything I've done to it, as it sits right here, it only holds 11 rounds. Somebody might say, well, that's 11 rounds of 45 ACP. And yeah, I get it. 45 ACP is still a good cartridge, especially with the good self-defense loadings these days. It's a great cartridge. But as comparison, here's the CZ-P10 from the factory. It's going to cost bunches less than this thing. And I've got 20 rounds of 9mm right from the factory in a lighter, more ergonomic package. Now, I know the 1911 is ergonomic, but the newer guns are more ergonomic. The biggest thing about the 1911, I think, is the fact that you have history behind it. That's what makes it fun. Between law enforcement and military, there's a lot of history behind this particular firearms design. Ever since World War I, the military's been using it all the way up to the current, the last Iraq War, and even in Afghanistan a little bit. From what I understand, there were still some old batches of surplus 1911s floating around. I don't know if they were used by the Spec Ops crowd or what, but they were still out there. There's photos of them out there. I'm like, holy crap, that's awesome. Seeing these old surplus 1911s still in use. It's rare, but it was still out there. So the military, you've got a long history of usage, and it served the military well. The same with law enforcement. Law enforcement has a long history with the 1911 as well. More so recently, it's all been, the polymer, the Glocks, for the most part, Glocks, Smith & Wesson, and then you have some other law enforcement. It's a few law enforcement agencies, they'll run Springfields or HKs or whatever. But, the double stack striker fired polymer handgun kind of took over. And, when you're shooting a striker fired gun, it can almost be boring. And I know some people may not like to hear that. And I love shooting. I like shooting all guns. But when you take a gun like this is just the gun I pulled out for an example. But it could be this, or it could be a Glock or whatever. You shoot these things, it's low recoil, extremely reliable, extremely accurate. After you put a couple hundred rounds through, unless you're doing some sort of specific training or whatnot, it'll almost get boring. Because it's just boringly reliable. It just keeps going and keeps going. Okay, they're very easy to use. And I get that. There's nothing wrong with that. You want that in a self-defense situation. You want something extremely reliable. But it can get boring on the range, in all honesty. To me, Glocks are boring. I'll never pick up a Glock again because, a little plug for CZ, the CZ-P10 is better. Just my opinion. Take it with a grain of salt. But when you pick up a 1911 and you shoot a 1911, it's different. It's heavier. You have manual safeties that you have to work. You have the beaver tail, rat tail safety on the older ones, just depending on the profile. You've got a single action hammer, a light trigger. The recoil feels a little bit different. It's just a different beast. And that makes it fun. Especially if you're shooting an actual surplus gun or a gun modeled to look after a surplus gun. It feels like you're shooting a little bit of history. It feels like, you're back on the sands of Iwo Jima or something or whatever, in the jungles of Vietnam or something. So there's a little bit of that. It's almost like, for example, if you take a Desert Eagle out. The Desert Eagle, as far as practicality, sure, it can be used in a self-defense situation and be used well, but it's not going to be as practical as other firearms. Yet if you take one out, they're just fun to shoot. Just like a big bore revolver. It's just fun. It's fun. I don't think there's anybody, unless you're really recoil sensitive, I don't think there's many people that don't enjoy shooting stuff like that. So there's kind of a fun aspect to it. That's why I still have a 1911. It's, I'll be honest, this thing's more of a safe queen than anything. You can tell by looking at it. I don't take this out. I don't beat it to death. I mean, I guess if I wanted to do that to a 1911, I probably wouldn't do it to this one. I'd probably buy some 1911, not put a whole lot of money into it, and just take it out and shoot it. But they're really fun. They're more of a historical thing to me. Between the law enforcement and military histories of the 1911, it interests me. Just the feel of it. I like the iconic look of the 1911. It is a kind of an iconic handgun. If you see one in an open holster, whether it's a law enforcement, which there are still plenty of cops. There's plenty of cops in my area that carry 1911s. And it looks cool sitting in the holster. You have it sitting in the holster. You see the hammer exposed, all that good stuff. You know exactly. You're like, yeah, dude's rocking a 1911. The style points that this gun has just beats out everything else. I mean, honestly, you take a look at this right here. You're looking at this on the camera, and then you look at this. This looks kind of boring to me. It is. It's an awesome gun. I love it. I love all my striker fireds. I love striker fired guns. But compared to this has just got some style to it, some pizzazz. So I think for the 1911, if you're wanting to buy one, just kind of look at what you're doing. If you're looking for purely a tool for self-defense, I would suggest getting a tool for self-defense first, and then look for the fun guns later. So, if I only have $500 to spend and I have a choice between a $500 1911 or this for $500, get this every day, all day, 365 days a year. No questions asked, because $500 in a 1911 might get you a decent one. But honestly, it'll be kind of mediocre. You got to if you want something kind of snazzy for the 1911, you got to spend a little bit more money. Or if you buy a budget gun, you have to put money into it to get it all tricked out like you want, if that's what you're looking to do. So, I mean, I think this day and age, the 1911, it's kind of like a revolver. The revolver is out of date. I know it's still used, but it is out of date. You can't deny that. It is out of date. But it's still fun. So I like to think if I ever buy another revolver, it'll be for fun. It's because I kind of like revolvers. So it's the same thing. If I ever want to get a black powder revolver, I may get one just because they seem really fun. And that's okay. People sometimes get caught up on the practicality side of firearms. We talk about practical. Sometimes it's cool to just buy firearms that are just cool. I mean, I'd like to own a Tiger Stripe Desert Eagle. Why not? Who doesn't? So anyway, I hope the video is kind of decent, and if anything, create some talking points. It's just one of those, some guns are bought because of the history, the feel, the fun of it, and not so much the ultra practical, so-called tactical side. So, and I think the 1911 anymore falls under that. I love those guns to death. I'll always have a 1911. This thing's going to be handed down to my kids after I pass away. So that's just me. But anyway, feel free to put your comments in below, and I don't want to offend anybody. Please, nobody take it that I'm saying the 1911 isn't good for self-defense. It's an awesome self-defense gun. But there are some drawbacks in comparison to the modern guns. That's all I'm saying. And it's probably more best suited for maybe competition role, or for historical, or just to own, just to have a good heirloom in the family or something, and whatnot. So anyway, all right, enough yammering out of me. Feel free to bicker and argue or comment or whatever in the comment section below. And as always, stay safe out there.